Hello and welcome to episode 334 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Now today's episode for me personally is very special. I feel a bit like I'm a kid out of school collecting all the panini stickers in the playground because I'm a huge fan of this band, Empire State Bastard. You may remember in episode 300 I was joined by Simon Neil from the band and obviously Biffy Clyro. Only a few weeks after that, I was so lucky to be joined by Dave Lombardo. Yes, the Slayer drummer, Mr. Bungle, but also Empire State Bastard. Now at that point, I had done 2 members out of a band of 4, and I thought to myself, I do genuinely feel like I need to complete this collection of all 4 now. So I'm going to set it for myself, a bit like Thanos and all the stones, to get all 4. So today is one step closer to that. So I'm absolutely thrilled to announce that my special guest today is Naomi Macleod, the bassist from Empire State Bastard and an absolutely incredible session musician. I'm so thrilled that I've been able to do this interview. Naomi is absolutely incredible, a superstar and just an absolute beautiful person. Her interview today is one of the best I've ever done and I absolutely love it from the moment we start talking till the end. We share a lot of stories about how the band came about, how they actually auditioned for her, how it's going to be about going over to America and supporting Sleep Token on a number of dates, and so much more. But I won't go into too much detail because you can stick around, listen to the interview and find out in just a couple of minutes' time. But before I do that, let's quickly touch base and talk about my last episode. It was only a few days ago, but I was joined by Mikey White from another amazing band called Fangs Out, a band that you should be listening to. And if you're not, after today's interview and listening to Empire State Bastard, give Fangs Out some time because they're awesome. But as I said, today it's all about Empire State Bastard, a band that have really only hit me for about 12 months since last summer, but they've blown me away. Their new album, which is their debut release, is called Rivers of Heresy. It's fucking awesome and you should go and listen to it right now. Well, actually, listen to this interview and then go and listen to the album. Also, if you're from America, go and check them out when they're supporting Sleep Token. And they've just literally this week been announced for 2000 Trees in the UK. They played there last year. That's how the interview came for Simon. And honestly, they're one of the best bands of the whole weekend, so I can't wait to see them again. I think I've talked enough now, and the best thing to do is to get to the interview with me and Naomi. So here we are talking all things music. So Naomi, thank you for joining me today on the Mark and Me podcast.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
What I love to do with all guests that come on is take it right back to the very start. So I'm always intrigued with musicians and people in bands that when you're a kid, can you remember that first album that you bought or was handed down to you or given to you that made you fall in love with music?
Depends how far back we want to go. I feel like very quickly I sort of fell into the music that has stayed with me as a constant up till now, the sort of punk and metal and heavier music. But I'll be dead honest with you, my first all-consuming obsession was Boyzone.
Wow, I was not expecting that.
I mean, it was a pretty common experience for a young girl growing up in Dublin in the 90s. So yeah, there was a big pop explosion in my life first as a young kid, probably up until around 9, I want to say.
I was waiting for you until about 22, and I was thinking, wow.
Until about 34, yeah. So pop was my first love and remains a big love. But the first sort of, if you want to call it a gateway drug, band was probably Chili Peppers. I got into them quite young. Whenever the album By the Way came out, or the album that By the Way was on, was By the Way the album?
It was called the album as well, I think, yeah.
So around the time that came out, and I'd heard like a little bit played sort of on the radio, and it had sort of piqued my interest. So yeah, they were a band that like really really sort of stood out to me as just this sort of like, wow, what's this? There's definitely something, more vibrant going on to my ears here. And they were the first sort of rock concert I ever went to as well.
Oh wow. I
Yeah,
mean,
my dad brought me.
Chili Peppers have been kind of hit and miss for me. So I've seen them at festivals and they've been terrible. Like I saw them, I
Oh
think, at
right.
Reading, and I was like, the harmonies and John Frusciante at the time just sang so badly, and Flea was just, it just didn't work. And then I've seen them again at gigs and they've just blown me away and just been on it. They're like, there's a few bands out there, especially Deftones and bands like that. I love them, but they're hit and miss when I go and see them. I'm like, which version am I getting? But
Mm-hmm.
when I've seen Red Hot Chili Peppers when they're on fire and they really are up for it, there's nothing that beats it. Stuff like Soul to Squeeze live and stuff like that was just
Oh yeah,
incredible.
100%. And I actually don't think I've seen them since this gig. So this must have been 98, 99, 2000. I feel like it was earlier than that. But yeah, so it was a good day for the Chili's because I just remember this gig completely blowing my mind. I remember seeing I hadn't even really turned my ear towards like bass as an instrument or anything like that just yet, but I remember seeing Flea like fully do a somersault while playing and just turn to my dad and go, what's he doing? This is wild. It was definitely a step away from sort of the boy band type of stage performance I'd seen up till then.
Was it kind of a moment when you saw the Chili Peppers live that kind of made you want to be in a band, or was it later on after kind of experiencing a few gigs? And especially you said your dad was with you, so was he kind of like getting you to broaden your horizons and see all these different types of live acts?
Yeah, I was very lucky with my parents. My parents are both artists, like visual artists, and separately both had and still have great taste in music. So there was always tons of music playing around the house. In fact, another early like definite inspiration was that my mum used to have this Roxy Music VHS like tape
That's
playing
very cool.
like most weekends. So I'd be like dancing away to all the dead cool and still dead cool to this day, like Brian Ferry videos. Um, but yeah, Chili Peppers was an amazing sort of first live experience. But it like you say, it was later that gigs started really, I suppose, conveying to my brain that this is something that potentially I could do, or that this is something that I really wanted to do, and be sort of on the other side of the stage, I suppose. Like quite quickly after sort of falling down the Chili Peppers pop punk rabbit hole, I sort of very quickly fell into heavier ends of things. So your Slayer and
Oh wow.
Slipknot and Korn all sort of rose to the surface by the time I was about probably 11 or 12, I'd say.
I love that in 2 years you went from Boyzone to Slayer. I mean,
I,
that's pretty good going.
it was a short pipeline.
Yeah.
Like,
No in between, like, yeah, we'll just go straight from one, end to the
yeah.
other. But
I'm
stuff like
sorry, Ronan Keating. There's this singer I keep hearing. His name's Tom Araya. Yeah, I don't know.
it's
No, it was
amazing.
probably a bit longer than 2 years
Yeah.
from my first pop band to all the way to Slayer.
So was it kind of the guitar you started to pick up first, or was it like I want to play bass, or I? Because obviously I don't know your whole musical journey, so I don't know how it all started for you. Because at school I was forced to kind of play the piano, and my parents were like, you must have piano lessons, and I was like, I don't want to. It's not cool, but now I'm quite grateful because I learned all the chord structures and the way that music is actually notated, and it helped me
Hmm.
then kind of transition to guitar. But I was wondering, where did it all start for you to pick up an instrument?
So of the rock instruments, it was guitar
Yeah.
before bass, but before that, in my primary school education, so I went to two schools called Gael schools, where Irish was exclusively spoken. Everything was taught through Irish, except literally your English class. Um, and my primary school was incredibly active in teaching Irish traditional music. So my first actual instrument was tin whistle and then flute,
Wow.
playing beautiful trad music as part of sort of weekly lessons. So that was from probably age 7, and I still like to pick up the flute sort of whenever I can these days. I'm still a massive listener of trad and lover of trad music, and obviously, as you know, it's seeing a great sort of renaissance at the moment in music coming out of Ireland, which is fab. Um, but in terms of more sort of rock oriented instruments, yeah, as I say, it was guitar. I think a huge a huge name in my early listening was actually Limp Bizkit, which I should have mentioned that initially. They were just massive to me. They were the first sort of definitely the first new metal band that really sort of consumed my brain for several years there. And Wes Borland was and still is a musician who just utterly blows my mind in sort of the art that he's able to pull out of the guitar as an instrument.
There's been
So
kind of like a resurgence with Limp Bizkit. I mean, I've always
mhm,
loved them. I'm not against Limp Bizkit. People think it's cool to hate on them, but one of the first
I never
proper
got
gigs I
that.
went to was Korn and Limp Bizkit in Wolverhampton, and those two together
Amazing.
were just mind blowing. And I think at the time they just released Counterfeit as a single, so it wasn't before they hadn't got stuff
Counterfeit
like
was early as well.
really
That was
early.
first album.
Yeah, and he
Yeah.
came on stage with like a pair of tights on his head, and it was insane. But the energy they had and playing stuff like Faith at the end, it just honestly blew up. And I was like, I've never hated them. I've never gone with this whole, oh, it's cool to hate Limp Bizkit. The fact they're playing Download this year excites me. I saw them in London last year, and it was like they've never been away. They're just phenomenal live.
Yeah. Yeah. I still haven't got to see them live, which is a real
What? This is
tragedy.
not good. We'll
So
change
one
that. We'll make this happen.
absolutely will make this happen. I'm pretty sure ESB is on the same day as them at a festival during the summer. So
Awesome.
I will be making whatever alterations are required to my logistics that day. I don't know about the rest of the band, but I will see Limp Bizkit. I remember a particularly traumatic moment from my teen years was I had tickets to a gig that they were to play in Dublin, and it got cancelled very very last minute. And I can still remember my classmates saying to me, because this was pre phones, early internet still, probably '04 or '05, and I still remember my classmates saying, "Oh yeah, yeah, I heard Limp Bizkit was cancelled," and I like flew into a rage, and I was like, "What are you talking? Like, you don't know what you're talking about? No, it's not cancelled."
I'm never accepting this. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it was, and they didn't play.
Well, it'll be worth the 25-year wait when you see
Yeah,
them this year, honestly.
exactly.
And
You're putting age on me there, Mark. It was more like a 19-year wait, I think, if I'm
yeah,
doing my
not too
maths
bad.
correct.
But with the starting on the guitar, and obviously you said you were playing the flute and everything else. But when it came to them playing the guitar and being inspired, people like Wes, that's just the best foundations you're going to get out there. Like, there's no one else like him.
Hmm.
Even the way he looks, even the way he plays, the chord progressions he does, it's not all really technical. It's just solid and really great riffs. And
Totally.
did you kind of sit there and think, I want to be in a band, or were you just happy just to sit there playing the guitar at home and kind of learning some of these favorite songs by these bands that you were then influenced by?
I definitely did want to be in a band, um, but I don't think it was as sort of all consuming as my want to just play music.
Yeah,
I mean, I wasn't really thinking about it in any particularly deep uh, context at that age. I just I knew I loved this music. I knew I wanted to sort of get, like, particularly once, like, I pretty much consider my listening journey and playing journey sort of like pre heavy music and post heavy music. And once I sort of got into the, the very wide area of heavy music, I just felt like this is a language I didn't know existed. This is a language that makes sense to me in a way that I can't yet put into words, and arguably still can't. And I just want to experience it. I want to play it. I want to listen to this and never stop, basically. Um, I was lucky in my secondary school in that it was also very music geared. Not every school at the time had sort of like a drum kit and a guitar and a bass, like a performing rock band setup, if you
yeah,
like. And my school did. We had a great music teacher um, who would allow sort of various groups sort of go in even on our lunch times, like additional to class time, and just jam out. So all of our sort of end of term concerts, I would get involved in those. I won a battle of the bands playing "Run to the Hills" by Iron Maiden, which was a
That's
total
amazing.
like that was like such a like nerd win for me to win a contest. And that was on bass. So by that point, I definitely was very much playing bass. Um, but yeah, I think I sort of like white lied at one point. And sort of said, yeah, I can play the bass. I think I sort of white lied my way into getting on bass for one of the end of term concerts, and like pretty much as soon as I played a song or two on bass, I thought this feels uh, strangely more right than playing guitar.
I normally talk, and I think you've listened to a few of my interviews with other people that have been on the show, but I'm always amazed by people that do battle the band because I did it as well. I was in a band and it felt like the biggest victory ever. Even though I'm only
Yeah, dude.
16, it felt
Because it
like
is.
we've
It's
made
like
it. Like this is it. Like this
that's your
big.
that's your sport though when you're a
I was
teenage
going to say it's like
musician.
sports
Like
day for the
it's
people that don't want to have to get in their PE kit. Like
literally it's really hard to quantify music when you're a teen musician, and that's one of few ways in which you can.
yeah.
As silly as it might seem to us as adults, it's nice sometimes to be told you've won something.
So what happens after this? Like, do you leave school and just then you're a bassist and that's all you want to do? Is you kind of then going to college and being in bands, continuing and kind of getting involved as much as you can?
So I wasn't actually in a band in any sort of organized sense until a little later. I feel like maybe second year in uni.
Okay.
Um, I knew very clearly that I loved playing the bass, and I was very lucky to have parents who supported me in um, studying something creative. They were very understanding that I sort of wasn't particularly interested in um, going and doing a business degree or something like that. And I think they would have supported me had I gone down either the art or the music route, being quite successful artists in their own rights themselves. Um, and at the time, there was no sort of degree course in rock music or pop music in certainly in the Republic of Ireland. And for various reasons, I didn't necessarily want to move out of Dublin, so I ended up going into audio engineering, which I loved. I really enjoyed studying that, and I still think to this day it's been quite advantageous to have some training in that as a musician. And I would advise any musicians starting out to certainly try and train up in some sense,
I
whether
literally
it be
did music tech at uni as well for 3 years. So I went and did the whole music production and learning how to mic up a drum kit and how
Mhm.
to record bands in Pro Tools. And unlike algebra at school, I've used this all my life since. It's been
Yeah,
amazing.
exactly.
It's even
Exactly.
if it's just going to a show now and watching a band, I'm still fascinated by the sound desk and looking at what mics they're using and what pedals the
Hmm.
guitarist has got. And I'm a bit of a nerd for it, even though I don't do it very much now. I just obviously record audio through microphones for two people talking, but I'm still fascinated by the fact of how producers work. It blows my mind.
Hmm. Hmm. I feel very much the same as yourself, Mark. I've kind of worked in various parts of it, sort of on and off over the years. I worked as an audio editor, on and off, and my day job these days is loosely involved with music and audio editing as well, but never, yeah, I suppose never chase down a career as a full-time producer or a full-time engineer. But exactly like you say, those careers and the practitioners of both of those things absolutely fascinate me.
That's awesome. So I think, and I don't want to talk about this as like a political topic, but when I was at school, there was no females playing guitar or bass guitar or drums, and if there was, there'd be the one
There
person would be
was.
like, it'd be like the hottest person to try and get in your band. It was like I remember watching bands like Ash, and I was like, amazing! I'm now seeing Charlotte on guitar. This is amazing to see because all the bands I was listening to were like Feeder, Deftones, Green Day, Pearl Jam.
Hmm.
No females in the bands at all, and then you get like No Doubt would come out or Paramore, and you're like, oh great! Like there's a slight change in the dynamic here, and I'm loving what I'm seeing. Um, if you were my school at that time, you would have been like the number one priority to try and get in a band because we just didn't have any female guitarists or bassists, and it was like unheard of. So Was it different for you? Was it like, were you kind of around like-minded musicians that were, wanting to be in bands? Because it just seems like there was a big movement over the last sort of 10, 15 years where it's become more popular, which is how it should have always been.
Do you mean in terms of was I around fellow sort of
Yeah,
women and
was it?
female
Yeah,
identifying
was it?
musicians?
Yeah, was it kind of a nice balance, or was it like you found yourself always just surrounded like Battle of Bands and these projects you were doing that
Um,
was just all basically men everywhere?
hmm I definitely wasn't in a sort of a 50-50 gender breakdown, if you like. There was some amazing female musicians, or I prefer to say women or
Yeah,
femme musicians. I always think female musician just sounds so scientific
of
and
course.
it just sounds so segregated. Like I often joke with my friends about like, oh my god, do you see there's like a male musician in that band? Like, when you flip it, it's
Yeah,
this like quaint, funny thing. So I try to stop myself from leaning on it too much. Um, but yeah, there was some amazing women musicians in my school. But yeah, I have to agree with you. We were in a minority. Um, my own take on it is I just never thought about it, and I'm thankful I never thought about it. I never, whether it was misguided confidence or misplaced confidence or something, I don't know. But as a as a musician in the context purely of playing music, both initially personally and now professionally, I personally see it as a very genderless thing. And so when it's highlighted to me in non-neutral ways, like we're speaking about it
of
neutrally right
course.
now, which is great, but when it's highlighted to me in non-neutral ways, so maybe an ignorant comment from someone, or someone does something that really sort of highlights me as being separate simply due to my gender, I'm just like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
so fucking alien.
when you listen to a record, there isn't a piece of audio at the head of every at the top of every track that says female musician's going to play. You hear you
No, of
hear
course.
you
It's
hear you hear a drum take, or you hear a guitar melody or a bass line, and it's that's not gendered. So
no, of course.
I think it's a really, really, really important topic to talk about and to be aware of. But that was just my personal approach growing up, was to
It
not
wasn't even a
consider it
thought, yeah.
whatsoever.
And that's a great thing. And I wasn't ever getting at it in a way of like highlighting it that it was a divide. It's just at
Oh
school
yeah,
we just
no,
had nobody
hmm
in Battle of the Bands or at college or even when I was at uni that was just
hmm
I just didn't see it. And it was only when you got bands like Million Dead that were touring, you'd be like, amazing. Like this is so cool to see. And now it's
yeah,
completely different. It's great. Every band that you see at these festivals, and it's not about the genders, but I'm just highlighting the fact that I didn't know if you were always finding it quite a battle or difficult at times because it was such a male-led industry when I'm talking when I was in a band 20 years ago.
hmm I can't I can't say that it hasn't been without um sort of issues here and there. It definitely hasn't been like a battle for me, and to
No,
think that it would be a battle for anyone makes me really sad. And I've worked a little bit with amazing groups in Ireland, and they're actually an international group called Girls Rock, who run camps for young femme identifying musicians, to really boost their confidence and ensure that they're made aware that it's an open playing field,
of
and
course.
there's absolutely no reason why you should play less music or not play music or feel any differently to getting on stage versus someone of a different gender to you.
And this
Um,
is how it should be, and this is the positive side of it. And I love hearing this because that's exactly how it should be. And the fact you haven't had to think about it or take a step back is music to my ears. I think that's how the world should be.
I mean,
Obviously, too
yeah,
many
like
dickhead comments. I've just been reading forums and Facebook comments, and I get absorbed with Twitter, and you just see some dickhead like, "Fuck hot milk, it's got a female singer," and you're like, "Oh, are you really like that small-minded?" Like, oh,
yeah, I mean, we'd be lying to ourselves, Mark, if we said that there wasn't some really toxic commentary out there,
yeah,
like ongoingly, and like quite a bit of it. Sort of, some folk make assumptions that if you dress a certain way on stage that you're inviting a certain type of attention. And
Ugh.
it's like, if that's where your thinking stops, then like just don't come to the
Yeah,
gig.
just
You
don't
know?
bother coming out. Stay at home.
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually I should clarify that's not happened to me personally at all
Yeah, good.
with any current band that I'm playing with. But I see it about other bands, and it just fills me with rage. Like, it's
Yeah.
not to sound like a total hippie, but like it's about the music, you know. It's not
It
about
must like you.
it's
The
not about
best
who's
comment you
playing
said
it.
was when you get on Spotify or Amazon or wherever you get your music and you hit play. It doesn't matter. It
Yeah,
does not
and I mean,
matter.
one of the most recorded and the most famous bassists of all time is Carol Kay, who,
Exactly.
was an incredibly prolific session bassist, responsible for so many records where she wasn't, on the cover, and that's incredible music played by a woman that was arguably sort of perceived in a genderless way by the listeners of the very popular music, you know.
So let's fast forward a few years because I'm really intrigued. Obviously, I've had Simon Neil on here for episode 300. Dave
Hmm.
Lombardo's been on just afterwards, and I'm really intrigued. We've never heard from you. I'm obviously met you outside, I think, at Birmingham,
I was trying
which
to
was
remember where it was. I think Birmingham.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I just,
that's a good gig.
I've seen your download performance. I saw you at 2000 Trees, Arctangent, and then your solo show as the headline act. And the progression I've seen and the way that you've now gelled more each time, and just the way that you've all kind of evolved as musicians together has been a beautiful thing to see as an outsider. But if you would take it right back to the very start, I wondered how that first phone call took place, or the first email was sent, or how it came about that you had this opportunity to join, in my opinion, three of the most talented musicians out there right now.
I mean, I share that opinion
Yeah,
completely. I'm under no illusion who I'm playing with, if you like. To bring it right back, I was introduced to Mike at a gig in that sort of blurry lockdown phase, maybe
yeah.
2021. Do you remember when everyone had
Does it feel
just
so long ago now? It's weird.
it's a yeah, it's a very gray area in my mind.
Yeah,
Yeah, 2020 to 2020 to late 2022 is just yeah, a groundhog period. So at some point in trying to think back, yeah, at some point in, I think, late 2021, I was introduced by a mutual friend to Mike at a gig. I think it was down in Sheffield, and I had moved to the UK, both for my regular job and also to try and broaden maybe who I could play with in a session capacity. I'd been working as a session musician back home in Dublin for a few years
yeah.
at that point. Um, and I moved to the UK about 3 weeks before the first lockdown, so you can imagine how my
Great timing there.
yeah, you can imagine how my session musician dreams were running by late 2021. So I sort of, any musician I met, I was sort of saying, if you ever need someone, let me know. And meeting Mike, I was very aware of Mike's, incredible CV
Yeah,
as an artist and as a musician with other groups as well. So we just had a little bit of chat. It was lovely to meet him. There was no like instant, yeah, we're going to be best friends. It was just like a great to meet you. Drop me a line if you ever need someone. And it was a little while later. It could have been a few months later. This Facebook message came. Um, it was, "Hi Naomi, hope you're well. I've got a new band with Simon Neil and Dave Lombardo, and we're wondering if you'd like to audition to play bass."
I'm pinching myself and getting goosebumps just hearing it. Never mind being the person that's got this Facebook message come through.
Mark, my temperature changed. I was like,
Or you're like,
yeah,
is this a spam? Is this like a fan site? Is it actually him
yeah,
sending it? Yeah.
yeah. I did like a double and a triple take probably at it.
Christ.
And yeah, it seemed so crazy at that time that I responded and I said, "Of course I'm interested." I didn't think of anything. I just said, "Yes, of course I'm interested." Um, not just like because of the who's who, but because I liked Mike's vibe when I met him, and he seemed like
Yeah.
someone I would like to work with. And I wasn't interested just based on names. I was interested based on what I knew of musically of this, and what I knew musically could potentially happen between these three people. Hadn't heard a note yet, obviously. Um, so Mike asked me to audition, and the audition, again, probably partially due to sort of lingering lockdowns at that time, was to send a video. The brief was, can you send us a video and just show us, like, can you just rock out a bit? We need to just sort of get a measure of your vibe. And he sent me Moi and Harvest to
Oh
learn.
wow.
Um, so I learned them both, and I'll never forget this. Like, having spent the time, learned the songs, got my kind of wrap my head around them, and then when I went to sort of send this video or record this video, realizing I just had this like living room just lit like this, like so unstagey. Um, so yeah, I got changed from my hoodie into into reasonably stagey clothes to video this sort of
And you just literally got an
performance.
iPhone or something, just filming yourself, just literally just kind of like miming
Mhm.
along to it.
Yeah, that's it.
Wow.
Donned my finest goth attire and my biggest boots, and I mean,
Rocked
not that
out.
not that any of that was new to me, but it was a few years since I had
Yeah.
done that by this point. So yeah, I videoed it with my cat staring at me, kind of going, "What the hell are you doing? Like, this isn't how you normally work at your desk. What's going on?" Um, Sent it off and didn't hear anything for a wee while, and I at that point it was just such an honor to have been asked to audition, and that was what it was in my mind. I just thought that it's incredible that they even asked, like that Mike even messaged, and I sort of assumed I was probably one of several, and probably someone with a longer relationship maybe with one of them, or someone with a bigger CV than mine in terms of session work would get the gig. And yeah, it was a few months later. I was coming out of work on a Friday, and I'd had a really, really rough day in work, I remember. And Mike Mike just said, "Can you give me a call?" And when it's someone you don't know
Your
well, and they
heart's like
just
didum didum
yeah,
didum.
yeah, and the message is just call me. Um, it's always a bit nerve wracking. And sat in the car, and it was a video call, and he just went, "Well, you've got the gig if you want it, and don't know yet the finer details, but like, do you want the gig?" And
Fucking
I mean,
hell.
again, I just said like, yeah, like and in my mind, it was exploding with
This is
several
the best day ever, yeah.
well, yeah, but just like, how's this going to work? How's anything going to work? What's as an avid overthinker, I was already considering things I just didn't need to consider in that moment. And that was it. And it was a brief call, and we both just went, cool, yeah, cool, chat to you soon. And
That's so
hung
casual.
hung up the call. And at that point I was just sat completely alone in the empty work car park, and I just was saying the F word out loud to no one in particular for probably probably a
I
few
love that
minutes.
that's on the end of a really shit day as well. Like you've had a really rough day at work and it's like there's the light at the end of the tunnel. Like
Yeah,
you
and it
probably
was it
already
was
given
like,
up. You in your head you must have been thinking it's probably not going to happen. Like I probably won't even hear back, but that was fun. But then to get that kind of golden ticket must have been like, fuck yeah.
yeah, and it was it was no one's fault. The really rough day. It was just one of those very rainy days in life where just you know things just aren't going amazingly or whatever. And then for that yeah, that visceral ray of light to just pierce pierce my week, as it were. And yeah, that was kind of the beginning. It was not for a few months more um that we actually met in person. um but yeah, that was sort of the beginning, and at that point I got to learning the album, which was uh quite a journey in itself.
I mean, that must have been incredible. And I take it, we'd already talked about like in bands like Slayer when you were growing up, but were you a fan of like Oceansize and Biffy Clyro and stuff growing up as well?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think, yeah, not to like quantify any of the three bands, because I they were all on my radar growing up. I loved them all growing up. I sort of Slayer were the first
Yeah.
of the three that sort of crossed my radar, and I still remember listening to like Angel of Death and Raining Blood and feeling again in a way that I couldn't articulate at the time, just experiencing something that heavy sonically, and the sort of soup of cathartic sensations and feelings that came with it, and just feeling like nothing I listen to will ever be the same again now that I've heard this. And I think you're only kind of granted a few of those moments
Of
in
course.
your music journey. And yeah, Slayer was absolutely one. I still remember, like, being on the train that runs up and down Dublin Bay, heading home one day after school, and I'd only recently gotten Rain and Blood
Wow.
on, I guess it was my Discman at the time. And I remember, and I told Dave this story recently. It's so like cringe now, but I remember being sat, in just like totally on my own and in the seat with like my hood up, um, and like, yeah, Raining Blood in the earbuds, and just looking around at everyone and being like, "You've no idea what I'm listening to right now." like,
I
like
love that.
it was such a, like, young teenager sort of like,
Me versus the world.
yeah, exactly that. Yeah, like me versus the world. And yeah,
That's amazing.
Dave had a good laugh at that. That was something that was quite surreal to share with someone who was in the band in question, and then Biffy and
And
Ocean.
Biffy Clyro, like you've seen my interview with episode 300.
Hmm.
I've got to not fanboy here. We're talking about how to be composed around people, but you know what Simon meant to me, and growing up, that album from Black and Sky even to now,
Hmm.
everything they've ever released. I don't think there's a better songwriter on the planet than Simon Neil. I truly mean that.
Hmm.
I think he's
Hmm.
our Kurt Cobain of today. He's
Hmm.
unbelievable.
Hmm. Hmm. I mean, that's a boat in which I would be a fellow passenger
Yeah,
with yourself, Mark. Like Biffy and Ocean Size I got into around the same time, and it was a few years later. I was like 15, 16 by this stage, and had sort of uh I'd come a little bit off my exclusively heavy diet, shall we say, and I was sort of opening into the stuff that I really would still listen to this day. So heavy, and then a lot of maybe dancier electronic sort of stuff in with that. Um, so yeah, around 15, 16, a particular group of friends who were also going to the same sort of DIY punk gigs that I was going to, they sort of got me into this batch of bands in which Biffy and Oceansize were two. And I've really good memories around the time of getting into both those bands. It was like really good people that got me into those bands, and
I love this.
people whose taste I could really trust. And so it was sort of like, yeah, I don't know. My association with Biffy and Oceansize was like, this is music for people with discerning ears, and I kind of still stick by that to this
Of
day.
course.
I think I really try and not get too involved in the conversation of what's good music, what's bad music. In fact, like, there's no such thing as bad music. Is
No.
It's almost a hill I will die on. Like, that's how strongly I feel about that. But I do think I do
It's
still
taste,
think,
isn't it? It's preference. It's what
yeah.
someone's favorite band is someone's worst band, and vice versa. Like
Hmm.
I'm with you. I have a very collective music collection, and I appreciate music for what it is, whoever
Hmm.
it is, and I'm exactly the same. So we've talked about it, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this episode, but the trolls and the negativity and the kind of poison out there, people just being cool to hate bands.
Hmm.
It's nothing worse. I fucking
Hmm.
hate it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's it's a real waste of energy, I
Ugh, yeah,
think.
massively. Just
Um,
embrace it and go to a festival and enjoy the fact that there's such a variety of bands. You might not love the headliner, you might not like that band that's on the second stage before your favorite band, but
mhm.
someone does. So just enjoy it.
Yeah, and like, lean into the bands you don't like,
Yeah,
learn about them, do a deep dive on them, and like, yeah, do your research before saying, I could play that guitar line, or, as or something that you know, reveled leakly in when I hear people saying it about visual art. Like it just makes my teeth itch when I hear people say, you know, I could paint that, I could do that. It's like, cool, do it then. You
Yeah.
know, I challenge you to do it. I challenge you to have the thought process that, you know, the musician or the artist had behind the thing that you're stood in front of, because I guarantee you it's not as simple as you think. And yeah, just to get back to Biffy, like, and Ocean Size within that was a real like cool left turn, I think, that my musical listening journey took, which was that like there was such chaos in both those bands sort of like earlier albums. And you know, Jaggy Snake is a song that, in fact, it was another song that impacted me in a way that music hadn't previous
Yeah.
to hearing that song. And the lesson, or the message that the song really sort of conveyed to my mind was like, music can be heavy and weird. You know, I'd heard plenty of weird music before, but I think Biffy represented this beautiful junction of heavy and weird.
I think like Infinity Land for me was also showing me that a band can start a song with one journey and you're never going to know where the journey ends. You are going to be taken here, there, down this path, a complete breakdown you never expected, a string section, a fucking absolute huge riff in the middle. And then the outro is not even part of the same song, but it gels and works. And it made me then fall in love with bands like Hell is for Heroes, 100 Reasons, and all those bands that came along in the kind of same time. And maybe I'm being nostalgic, but those bands 20 years ago just changed my life. Like then I got into Thrice and Deftones, and wow, it just evolves from there.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's a really good assessment of that album. And I think that album is a like reasonably good sort of universal example of songs being of rock songs being an unpredictable journey, you know.
Yeah.
A to Z not being as linear as
Exactly that.
as more classic rock would have you believe, you know. And I think that, like, it's not for me to say, obviously, because I didn't write any ESB songs to date, but I think that approach is very perceptible with Mike's music and with what Mike and Simon have done with ESB as well, with the first album.
What was it like when you first, obviously you got sent it and you were learning the songs and then you met up with them? Was it kind of, I need to compose myself, this is the guy that wrote some of my favourite songs, this is the guy that plays drums on one of my favourite band's albums? God, are you kind of like, I just need to try and be cool, like I've got to play this right? Or were you just kind of not fazed by it?
I'm still like that, Mark.
Really?
I mean,
I like how humble and honest you are, yeah.
This, like, I'm usually a very sarcastic and jokey person, but that's not a joke. Like, no. I think I sort of, well, it was on my side that I'd done sort of session work before.
Yeah.
And the thing I love about session work, and what I still love about it going forward, and you know, into however my musical future shapes itself, is I love that it forces you to step into someone else's house, as it were.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
and basically come in and honor their art, and then, you know, leave again if you're stepping in to do some live work, or if you're stepping in to maybe add parts that have been written already on a recording. Obviously session work can take many forms, but those are the ones that I've happened to do thus far. And so yeah, you sort of get used to that mental preparation of sort of stealing yourself for what form it might take, you know. Are the people going to be sound? Is, you know, yeah, the music's amazing, but like, are we going to get on as people? Are we going to sort of,
is it going to
vibe?
gel?
Yeah. And like, with this gig, I was prepared for many things, but I probably wasn't prepared for how easily and how well we all got on from literally the get-go. Obviously the three, I mean, obviously Mike and Simon have a very long working relationship. I didn't realize that they hadn't met Dave before contacting him to play on the album. It's
outrageous, isn't it? The fact you reach out without this kind of history.
Yeah, exactly. I think from my standpoint as a general fan, as it were. I sort of assumed that they must have crossed paths before, so that was amazing to me. Um, and then yeah, I wasn't prepared in a positive sense for just how easily and how instantly we all got on. So in terms of, to answer your question, in terms of sort of nerves and how it felt sort of beforehand, I think I was just about able, with my previous experience of sort of playing with new people, I was just about able to feign coolness and sort of dissociate my way through how completely uh wild it was, to not just be stepping in with sort of one member of a four-piece band, but to step in with three. I mean, still
I
as
don't
I'm
know.
here,
I can't get my head around it, and that's me not even in the band. I just don't know how you do it.
I mean, still as I'm sat here chatting with you, if I really zoom out and think about it, it is
Let's
like,
not do that, otherwise you might get scared and run. Like tomorrow, you're like, quit the band. I'm like, oh, that didn't go the way I expected this interview to happen.
no, no, no. But like, yeah, if I do zoom out and think about it, I still, even now after a bunch of good, like great gigs under our belt, I still sort of think like, how the hell did that happen? Me,
And
like,
is it mind blowing that
does seem odd.
you kind of your kind of big debut to prove yourself was Download Festival, knowing that the general public didn't really have much to go off. There wasn't like much. I think there may have been one single at the time that had gone out. Maybe not even that. It's it wasn't like, is this Biffy Clyro? Is it going to be Slayer? Is it going to be Oceanside? Is it going to be completely different? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
Simon's not playing guitar, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't sound like Biffy. It's heavier than I've ever expected, and he's screaming, and
Yeah. Sorry, I'm correct.
it's
I'm correcting my head shake there, because I think Harvest
I
must
think
have been out.
I think Daniel Picard had played Harvest the week before on the rock
Mm-hmm.
show, and that was the first time you kind of got a bit of a flavour. But it's only one song, so you could have been like,
Mm-hmm.
this isn't like the rest of the album. But
Yeah.
to then try to prove yourself at a festival, you must have been like, right then, let's go out there and just fucking enjoy this.
It was really intense.
Yeah,
Yeah. So Download was, if I'm remembering correctly, Download was our fourth gig,
yeah.
and we had three small venue gigs. Um, yeah,
There's warm ups, wasn't there? There was like Manchester and stuff
we'd
in
had the
London. Yeah.
Cat House in Glasgow, Rebellion in Manchester, and the Underworld in Camden back at the end of March, and then reunited to do Download, and then Hellfest in France a week later in June. Download was like really the stuff of dreams, and it was, by Download standards, not a large stage, but by personal standards was definitely among some of the biggest that I had played to date. And it was an intense gig, and it really felt like sort of hallowed ground being there with Dave. And you could feel that from Dave as well. Like his vibe during the Download gig was like, I'm home. Like, this is sort of yeah, a place where he has shone many times, and did again on that gig. And to get back to sort of your comment about like the music being so relatively unknown, and yet us sort of coming and performing it to crowds who, in most cases truly didn't know what to expect. It was a very strange experience, and also for me as well, to have stepped in following the creation of the music. It felt almost like being a step further to the side, like a sort of terrified but dedicated fly on the wall to what was going on.
I'm not just saying this, you absolutely nailed it. Like, it is like you guys.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank
I
you.
mean it. And, I've been honest with bands. I think that's why people like Mark and me. It's not like just saying what people want to hear, and I'm not trying to get a headline from somebody. It's just two people having a normal conversation, but you were all phenomenal. And it was like you'd all
Thank you.
been together for a long time. But saying that now, in a weird way, in hindsight, the difference from that set to then when I saw you in Birmingham a year later or 8 months later, whatever it was, maybe even less.
So much less than a year later, 5 months
Is
later,
that all it was?
and 5 months and not that many gigs later. Yeah.
God, it just seems like such a long time. I then went to 2000 Trees, and also you had a different drummer, but you guys
Yes.
really had upped
Tom
it. And I was
Rice.
like, oh yeah, you guys have really got something special. And then Arctangent felt even bigger and better, and more people had heard more songs. And then when I saw you on your own tour, it's the tightest I've heard a band. You just all were locked in. I could see you and Dave like just on the same level. You know, like just the eye connection, the way you all gel. Simon and Mike, it just felt like a complete step up, and I was blown away at download. So for the outsider, it was just like, yeah, you can see these guys have really just fallen closer together. And I suppose it's hard because you're on the inside, but as an outsider, I just saw you all just progress and probably fall in love with each other more and feel more comfortable around each other and less at stake. You know, it's not like a big download, and it just was
I don't know about
beautiful.
that. It still feels like a lot at stake for
But it
me.
was just beautiful.
But yeah, no,
It was
I
amazing. You know,
yeah. Well, I don't want to speak for all the guys, but I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you. Um, yeah, I think it's fair to say that it's been quite a tall order that the music was recorded remotely and still sort of captured the vibe that was captured on the album. Which, I mean, I'll openly say I'm a fan of the album. I think it's
it's
absolutely
fucking
fantastic.
made my
And
top 5 albums of the year last year, and I still can't believe it's not done in the same studio, all of you together. It just blows my
hmm
mind.
hmm and Mike on bass as well, killed it. But yeah, like I've what an honor to get to even play that on any stage to begin with. But I think it's fair to say it's not simple music. It's music that was written to be challenging,
Yeah,
as in sonically challenging to the listener. And I can confirm that is matched in playing. And for us to come together remotely and sort of try to do it justice in really a very short space of time, I think was quite a feat. And I think it was only natural that with each gig we would all sort of lock in that little bit more. And yeah, by the time it came to our UK and Europe tour in November, it really felt,
I can't believe it's
particularly
only that
with
many. I honestly thought it was about a year. That's how quick the summer went. I can't believe it
yeah,
was from like June to then November.
yeah. So our gigs last year were from end of March till mid November. That was the
Wow.
beginning to end of gigs. Yeah. So we got quite a lot done in that sense. But yeah, to feel the music begin to groove and begin to sort of begin to flow. Not that it didn't in those first gigs, but in those first gigs, it's like with all the dedication and musical dexterity, which obviously the three guys have in terrifying abundance. Um, there is still an almost inexplicable and almost imperceptible thing that happens when humans just spend longer playing
Yeah.
music together. And I think it's really wonderful that we weren't in a rehearsal room every other day during all of those months. It was a little bit staggered, sort of meeting for a festival here, meeting for a festival there, and then getting a little time in the rehearsal room before setting out for another few gigs. And yeah, I think it's I don't want to speak for the guys, but I think the band did itself proud in terms of where we were at certainly by the end of the year with those gigs on tour.
And how does it feel now, kind of sitting here, getting ready for writing more music, and obviously a second album, and the huge announcement of going over to America and playing with Sleep Token? It's just Sleep Token. Again, we talked earlier, and this is going like a full circle, but there's this moment of hating bands, and Sleep Token seemed to be the band that it's cool to hate for some reason. But at the same time, they sold
Can't
out
get with
Wembley
that at
Arena
all.
in 9 minutes and are one of the most talented set of musicians one of the best live shows I've ever seen in my life.
Hmm. Hmm.
They're incredible, and
Hmm.
I don't know how it must feel sitting there knowing you're going to go and get to open for these guys across America and do it all again.
It's a very deep honor, and I'm yeah respectfully terrified and excited for what's to come. No, it's going to be amazing. And yeah, what an honor to be any part of a show that band are putting on. There's so many interesting things about Sleep Token, not just musically, but the entire sort of world they've created around
It's amazing.
themselves.
It's
Um,
unbelievable.
yeah, I don't even want to comment on anyone like, yeah, anyone sort of commenting negatively on them in their safe space that is the internet, because I just think it's inarguable that they're hitting upon the exact thing that makes some bands stand out, which is true crossover of genres, true
Yeah.
crossover of musical style. Um, I don't like to use this word about a band, but branding. You know,
No, it is. It's
they
incredible. It
have
comes with this whole kind of product.
yeah, and again, it's not nice to sort of put these words on someone's art, if you like, but there's something more than what you hear on Spotify. There's an
Yeah.
entire world to delve into with them. And I'm looking forward to seeing that 17 or 18 times
God,
on
it's going to be
this tour.
incredible.
Yeah. And yeah, to just bring I suppose the ESB set and experience hopefully to an awful lot of new people is again just a great honor and very, very exciting. So I think we'll have some really great times out there.
I think it's a great mindset as well. So obviously Dave's been there, lived it, done it all. Simon's toured the world with Biffy and literally headlined festivals. Mike's been there with Ocean Size and Biffy Clyro. But it's a different mindset. You're opening up for another act with a different set of different set of music and songs, and your purpose is going to be to win new listeners. You know, to take people that hopefully have gone there for Sleep Token and they leave that night going, "Fuck me, that opening band was brilliant. I want to check them out." That must be so refreshing for those guys as well, because you're kind of out of your comfort zone. It isn't like, oh yeah, they're all going to sing along to Many of Honor and they're going to sing along to Reign of Blood and all this. They're going to be there to hear it for the first time and hope that you kind of, like the Battle of the Bands, you get people are going to start, thinking, I'm going to start supporting these guys.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to speak for anyone else in the band, but I think this support slot is such an interesting context to put any band in. Because let's face it, the chances are the crowd are there to see the headliner, and maybe a smaller amount of the crowd are there to see both bands, and if you're very lucky, maybe someone is there with the support band in mind. But the vast majority of people, you're having to, like you say, sort of win their gaze, both with their ears and eyes, and sort of try and leave a lasting positive impression with your art. Like, what a vulnerable place to be in. So, yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how that works for ESB. I do think there's I can certainly pick out kind of commonalities musically.
Definitely.
And
As soon as I saw it on the post, I was like, those two are going to work so well together.
I think the respective crossovers of both bands, the sort of things that Simon's vocals bring to sort of Mike's melodic approach with ESB, I can sort of see how they might complement Vessel's vocal work with Sleep Token's music.
It's going to be incredible.
Even talking about it now, it's like, oh yeah, this
real.
Really is happening. Like, no one else is driving this thing. But yeah, absolutely beside myself with excitement for it. So yeah, and it's interesting to have a relatively kind of quiet few months before then as well. So I'm
able to kind of digest it all.
Yeah, and I should say that's just quiet for me. Mike's literally releasing an album of his own music, and Dave's busy and Simon's busy, and yeah, I'm busy.
Yeah.
I'm busy practicing and writing here as well. So yeah, it's not that there's nothing going on, but certainly from an ESB sort of gig front, there's nothing that I know of lined up until then. So it'll be a great way to jump back in.
Obviously, you know what's coming. My final question to everyone that comes on the podcast, it doesn't matter if you're an actor, director, a musician, a songwriter. What I really want to know is, as today's episode is out there for the world to listen to, you get to choose the final song that's played. Maybe you've had a bit of a head start because some people who haven't heard Mark and me are then going, oh my God, I wasn't expecting this. But is there a song that you absolutely love that you would love to be played out after me and you've spoken today?
Yeah. There is.
Is there
My
100 in your head at the moment and you're trying
Yeah,
to whittle it down
exactly.
to
Yeah,
one?
my brain has jammed about 7 in there. Um, but one that has been, I'm just trying to think. One that's been, I mean, does it like, would you rather it's a new song or?
You can choose whatever you want. I've had people that choose songs from the 60s, 70s, a new song. Some people have chose their own songs, but whatever you
Oh,
absolutely love.
I'm not going to do that. Okay, well, one that has been swimming around my brain pretty relentlessly for the past 2 weeks has been Frost Hammer by High on Fire.
I've never
And
heard this or them, so this sounds really interesting.
oh my goodness, Mark. Yeah, in the nicest way possible. Sorted out.
Yeah.
They're an absolutely incredible band. Big influence definitely on myself and Venart with anything that we do musically. So I hope that you will find something that you love
Oh,
in
I
High
love
on
this
Fire.
because some people pick the classics, and I love bands like the Beatles and Rolling Stones and Pearl Jam, but when I then now get to go on this kind of, oh, I'll listen to a bit more and I'll edit it in and then I'll go, oh, I'll have a check out the album. And then next thing I know, I'm just a huge fan of a brand new band, which is great.
Ace. Well, I really hope that. Yeah, High on Fire. They've been around a long time.
Yeah.
But they truly meld the best bits of sort of heavier punk and metal. And they're just an absolute powerhouse sonically. And I think they'll be touring around our necks of the woods this year, Mark. So
Well, I
hopefully,
will get on it.
hopefully see you out there.
I appreciate this has been an interview I've wanted to do for a while, and it's all about timing, I think. It's always about just being in the right place at the right time, and I really appreciate you taking the time in Birmingham to kind of say hello and kind of meet you in person, and then
Of
actually
course.
get to ask you in person. I didn't want it just to be an email or a text message, and taking the time to come on the show means a hell of a lot, and I know that you're probably frantically busy, especially with what's coming ahead with writing and a new album and then Sleep Token and festivals and everything else. But I never take people's time for granted and just want you to know how much I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's genuinely an honor to have been invited. And yeah, like you say, it was really nice to be invited in person. It's
Yeah.
like it was like the opposite of this meeting could have been an email.
Yeah, exactly that.
This email is a meeting, and
Yeah.
we're chatting about it now. So no, again, Mark, thank you very much. I hope I've given any listener something to listen to.
No, it's been amazing. And I feel like the kid at school who's got that sticker album that needs to kind of complete them all. So I've got Simon, Dave, yourself, Mike, and I feel like now I can get the shiny and say I've done them all.
Exactly. You're nearly there. You're
Yeah, so
75%
close.
of the way to a shiny.
Yeah, so it feels really good. But thanks for coming on and giving me your time. And I know our paths will cross again. I will.
Absolutely.
I can't promise I'm flying out to America to watch you with Sleep Token. That's just not going to
Oh,
happen.
oh,
But
Mark. Oh.
there'll be festivals, there'll be shows.
Of course there will. Yeah.
And I'll keep in contact. But thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure, Mark. Thanks so much. Take care.
So there it is. There's my interview with me and the amazing Naomi from Empire State Bastard. What an incredible human being. What an amazing interview. Someone that I could talk to for hours. And we have stayed in contact since, and I can't wait to go and see the band in the summer at 2000 Trees. As I said at the start of today's interview, Naomi is a dream guest. I am absolutely in awe of her skills. Her performance on stage at Birmingham was mind-blowing. The way that her and Dave Lombardo were locked in together, the rhythm section of this band is so tight, so crisp and just unbelievable. And I'm really grateful for you coming on the podcast today. If you haven't at this point still gone and listened to Empire State Bastard, go and do it, because honestly, it was my album of the year last year. It's absolutely awesome, and I can't wait to see what the band have got planned for us later this year, with hopefully more music soon. If you've enjoyed today's episode, as always, please share it. All the links for Facebook, Twitter and Instagram are on markandme.com. The podcast will always remain free, but if you do want to give a little back, I do have a Patreon account. On there, you can sign up for as little as £2 a month. For that, you get a welcome pack, which includes stickers, a badge. You get an exclusive episode, which the general public will not get. It's only for people on Patreon. There's prize draws, newsletters each and every month, and so much more. So if you can do that, it really goes a long way and helps me get this podcast out there on a number of different directories and travel the country to do more interviews for you guys at home. Just before I go, let's give a quick shout out to the podcast sponsor, Richer Sounds. Without those guys, I couldn't do this podcast. So if you're in the market for some home cinema, TV, TV stand, some headphones, Sonos, record deck, go on richersounds.com and treat yourself, because they are the best company out there and truly unbelievable people. Right, I'll be back in only a couple of days' time with another brand new episode. So until then, look after yourself, listen to Empire State Bastard, and I'll speak to you all very soon.